Well, hey everyone, it's Sean again, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the shadow and shadow work. It's going to be an interesting topic to talk about because there's a lot of talk, I know, especially in spiritual communities and even psychological ones, about working on the shadow and exploring the shadow. And, we tend to think we have a shadow self. That's part of us that we have to work on, explore, or heal. And I just want to give you maybe a different way of looking at it and just really kind of see it for what it is. So I'm going to use like an analogy of a shadow as a metaphor for how to look at it. So let's say we go outside on a sunny day, and what happens when we stand out in the sun is behind us, if we're looking at the sun, is a shadow. Our bodies are making a shadow because they're blocking the sunlight. So the shadow isn't, our real self, but it's only there because our body, in this case, our bodies are blocking the light. So if we really think about what a shadow is, and especially when we talk about in terms of the spiritual ideas and spiritual concepts of what we call the shadow self. Well, if it's a shadow, then obviously it's not real, because it's the only reason it seems to be there is because something's blocking the light. So if we think of it in spiritual terms, and spiritual ideas, that the light represents the light of God, the light of truth, the light of understanding. So what is blocking that would make a shadow, that would cause a shadow to appear? And here's what we do. It's like standing, using the body again, we're standing outside in the sunlight, and we turn away from the light. The light represents the light of God, the light of truth, turn our backs to the light and look at the shadow and go, oh, that's who I am. That's me that I must give life to. And we put all of our attention on a shadow that's really no different from a puppet, if you think about it, because the only reason it's there is because we're blocking the light. Yet we give the shadow self a reality by putting our attention on it, by giving it life. That shadow self is what we call in A Course in Miracles the ego. And we give it it has a thought system, so it's like, it has a voice, we call the ego. And so, but we think it's our real self. We call it the personality. And so we give this shadow a persona. And it's not real. Persona means mask. So it's just a mask we put on a shadow and try to give it life, and then go about defending it. And now we're protecting ourselves. There's this fear within the shadow because it knows that if we remove the blockage to the light, it will no longer be. So it fears the light. It fears God. It fears us making a decision against it. And so if you look at the shadow that way, then what is there to really work on? Wouldn't it make more sense to become aware of the blocks of the light, to the awareness of truth, the awareness of love's presence, the awareness of God, the light of God, the light of truth, the light of understanding, and then go about removing the blockages to that awareness, to the light. The shadows will they'll no longer exist. They'll no longer be there. And which, as long as we identify with the shadow, that's terrifying, because we think, well, then I'll no longer exist. Well, that must mean we're a shadow, and there is no reality in a shadow. It's just a figment, of our imagination, so to speak, because, again, the only reason it's there is because we're blocking the light of truth, the light of understanding. And as long as that block is up there, we're giving the shadow that appears because of that blockage, we give that the life that it doesn't have or even deserve or is not capable of even being, yet we bring it to life by our attention. And so that's what we call the personality, the ego self. So if we instead go about removing the blocks and begin this process of turning our attention towards the light of truth, the light of understanding. And we need help doing that because we have so much of our belief and faith wrapped up in our separate identity that we call it's a shadow self, because it's just a shadow of the real self. But we have all our faith wrapped up in it, and we're terrified of letting that go. So we need help doing that. And that's why we have the Holy Spirit, who is the voice of light. The ego is just the voice of the shadow, the voice of darkness. It has no reality because once we let the light in and light shines on it, we remove the blockage, which in this case would be our judgment of that we are separate from God, our belief that we're separate from God, from our source, and therefore that's all that blockage is blocking the light, is that belief, that sense of separation from our source, from the light. And therefore we have a shadow that appears that we put all of our attention into. All of our mind is focused on that. But once we start withdrawing that and shift that focus over to the light, that sense of separation will begin to melt away, and that shadow will begin to dissipate, and the belief that we have given it will now be shifted toward the belief in truth, the knowing of truth. And the shadow will just die away. Actually, it'll just end up just disappearing, going back to where it came from, which is nothingness. And so there's a part in A Course in Miracles. There's actually a section in chapter 17, section 3. It's called Shadows of the Past. And all it's saying is the shadows are really it's just shadows of the past that we're seeing here and experiencing. Because everything that's of this body, is of this world, and is, it's a dream of separation. It's already happened. This is all in the past that we're here to wake up from this dream of separation. And these shadow figures, as A Course in Miracles refers to them, is very interesting the way it puts it. I'm going to read a paragraph here in relation to this. But it refers to shadow figures as our grievances of the past, of something that may have happened to us, something somebody did to us, and those memories, those grievances and memories that we have of that person or people, those are the shadow figures in our mind, because we keep bringing them up to the present moment. And what happens is we'll project those shadow figures onto our current relationships. And now to the extent where it's no longer about that particular person in our current relationship, they are there almost like a placeholder for us to project our shadows of those shadow figures of a past grievance onto them, so that we can take our vengeance out on for what those shadow figures did to us. That's how insane the mind can be. But think about the cleverness of the ego to do that, to keep the past alive in our mind with these shadows, the shadow figures that we use, that we project onto other people, and then seek to get our vengeance for what they did to us. You are the reason I am upset. You're the reason I am guilty, or you're guilty for my guilt. You're the reason you did this to me. We have to find somebody to take that vengeance out on for what somebody did to us. And so these shadow figures that are just merely the grievances of a past action or event or circumstance that we have in our mind, we keep bringing them up and project them out onto our current situations to take them out on other people. We've all been either victims of that from somebody else or victimizers by projecting it onto other people. We've experienced both sides of it. And so think about that in that context. They're just shadow figures that we hold on to, to seek our vengeance out on, which is really what the ego's thought system in a nutshell. It has us seeking vengeance out on God for what we perceive as God doing to us. That you rejected me, you threw me out of the kingdom. When the reality is we just this whole dream of separation is just a missed thought of what would it be like to go off on my own. And so there's this one paragraph I want to read. It relates to these shadow figures. In the unholy relationship, it is not the body of the other which union is attempted, but the bodies of those who are not there. For even the body of the other, meaning the person that would be in front of us at that moment, even the body of the other, already a severely limited perception of him, is not the central focus as it is, or in entirety. What can be used for fantasies of vengeance, and what can be most readily associated with those on whom vengeance is really sought, is centered on and separated off as being the only parts of value. So it's like, the value of that relationship we're currently having for a lot of people, and we can see this playing out all the time. If you haven't experienced it, you can observe others experiencing that. But it's like the only value they really have is for us to take out our vengeance upon them based upon what somebody else did to us in the past. We project those shadow figures onto them and accuse them of what we think this other person did to us, even though this current person didn't have anything to do with that. And like I said, you probably have experienced somebody doing that to you at some point in your life. And the last line in that paragraph, the shadow figures enter more and more, and the one in whom they seem to be decreases in importance. So it's like the only value that person has is so I can take my vengeance out on them for what those other people did, because those are those shadow figures of vengeance. It is just a shadow. And so shadow work, thinking that we have to work on our own shadow, is like you're trying to bring the light to the darkness. And that's the same as what A Course in Miracles says when you try to bring truth to illusion. The ego is so clever at having us do that, because the ego will take truth. When we do that, when we bring truth to the illusion, it'll take it, flip it upside down, backwards, and then just foobar it to the max, and then present it as truth. And when it just in all of its chaos and confusion, where it's no longer recognizable. So it doesn't make sense to bring light to the shadow. And Jesus says, can you find the light by analyzing darkness? No. We have to be willing to bring the darkness to light. And what happens when we do that? It's like whenever if you were to walk in a dark room, you just light a match and the darkness disappears. It has no existence in that pure light of truth. There is no, darkness. There is no shadows there. There's nothing to block the light, so there's no shadows. So we have to be willing to bring the shadows to the light of truth, the illusion of shadows of illusion. And that's all these shadow figures are. You think about it, all the talk about, you look at the movies and books and TV shows, when they use shadows, they talk about shadows, being in the shadow, or shadow figures, it's scary. There's something unknown there. There's monsters lurking in the shadows, or, we have to work in the shadows, in the darkness, and be of that. It's just a shadow. There's nothing real about it. So we don't need to work on our shadow. We need to refocus our mind towards the light of truth, of our true nature. And those shadows will disappear. They're not real. So why work on an illusion when the light of truth is available to us? Remember, each one, whether it be the shadow of illusion or the light of truth, they both have a voice acting as a teacher and a guide. And our only choices we have, the only real choice we have, is to make a choice, either one of those paths. For whichever one we choose, we're going to experience that path of that. So if we choose a shadow, we'll be living in a world of shadows, thinking that that's what is real, and being confused by all the illusions that we're trying to make real, when there is the path of truth, the light of truth that lights our way for us. So, and I'm going to read one last paragraph from that same section. Again, this is chapter 17, section 3. when it talks about the other choice here. It is still up to you to choose to join with truth or with illusion. But remember that to choose one is to let the other go. Which one you choose, you will endow with beauty and reality, because the choice depends on which you value more. So we're valuing illusion or valuing truth, valuing shadows or valuing the light of reality. The spark of beauty or the veil of ugliness, the real world or the world of guilt and fear, truth or illusion, freedom or slavery, it is all the same. For you can never choose except between God and the ego. Thought systems are but true or false. That tells us right there. So a thought system, the Holy Spirit's thought system, is a thought system of truth. The thought system of the ego is a false thought system. There is nothing true about it because it's a thought system of illusions. So thought systems are but true or false, and all their attributes come simply from what they are. All the attributes, it's like, so if you want to know which one you've chosen, just step back and look at the world, the way you're perceiving the world at that moment, and all the attributes that are of that. If you're in any kind of fear, worry, anxiety, upset, anger, any of that, okay, that's just a thought system of that illusion. There is no peace in that thought system. But the other thought system is the thought system of peace, because it is a sure path of certainty. So it is a thought system of certainty. So thought systems are but true or false, and all their attributes come simply from what they are. Only the thoughts of God are true. And all that follows from them comes from what they are, and is as true as the holy source from which they came. So that is what I wanted to share with you on shadows and the idea of shadows and shadow work. So anyway, I just wanted to give you this idea, maybe a way to look at shadow and shadow work. If you're doing shadow work, hey, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not trying to offend anybody or saying you're wrong in doing that. I just wanted to give you another way of looking at it that may be very helpful to recognize, if we're working on an illusion, what can come of it but more illusions? It's like rearranging furniture in a burning house. Is that you're not really getting anywhere with it. So let's recognize the only reason a shadow self even appears to be there or to even be a thing is because we're blocking the light. What is that blockage? It is that judgment that we have sinned against God, and now we're not worthy of the light of love. Remember, A Course in Miracles, it doesn't try to teach the meaning of love, because that's beyond what can be taught here, but seeks rather to teach how to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. So anyway, I hope this helps, and if it does, let me know. I'd love to hear from you about that, or if you have any questions around that, please leave them in the comment section. And be sure to like the video, share it, and subscribe if you haven't already, so you can get some more of these videos when they come out. And that's it for today, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Be good to each other, okay? And I'll see you in the next video.